Hey guys, it's time for chapter 12 out of George Washington's Socks. Matt had never experienced such a storm. He couldn't even remember the last time he had been out in the rain, and when he finally did remember, he realized it was just to run a few feet from the car to the store. What I wouldn't give for a ride in a nice big heated car, he thought, and it wouldn't even have to have a radio. He wiped his nose, which had begun to run again, and he began to wonder if his body would ever stop hurting. He was trying to figure out which part hurt most. He clapped his chapped face or his frozen fingers when he suddenly felt the cold ice seeping into his linen-bound foot. He groaned with each step that left his foot a little wetter. But he kept his groans as low as he could and hoped they wouldn't be heard over the wind. When he looked at Israel, Matt saw his friend's head bent down into his chest. The rags that Israel had wrapped around the top of his head were frozen, and the snow was beginning to pile up on them, so that he looked as if he were wearing a white cap. Every now and then, Israel would stop, as a fit of coughing overtook him. Matt would wait beside him, not knowing how to help him. Matt tried looking around to see where they were, but it was all a blur of snow and trees. They could have been walking in circles for all he knew. After they had marched for what seemed like hours, the low voice of an officer called for them to halt. As Matt stood in line, a group of officers rode up beside him on horseback. Israel reached out and pulled Matt from the edge of the road, for one of the horses nearly stepped on Matt's foot. Together, the two friends silently watched as the group of officers held a short meeting. Matt and Israel could just make out the conversation. "Our orders are to break the detachment into 2 divisions, a blurry-looking lieutenant was explaining. General Sullivan will lead the march along the river road, and General Washington and General Greene will take a column along the Pennington Road. The distance both divisions are traveling is roughly the same. Upon forcing the outguards, you're to push directly into town, and we may charge the enemy before they have any time to form. His Excellency is determined that our destiny be decided this night. He beseeches you to instill in your men the necessity to bring down every Hessian until Trenton is freed of their scourge. For if we find defeat here, Philadelphia is surely lost." "So that's it," Israel whispered to Matt as the officer rode off. I knew when they ordered 3 days rotations that we were up for some endeavor. It's the Hessians in Trenton, isn't it? Have you ever seen one of those giants?" "Giants? What do you mean giants?" Matt gulped. "I've heard that most of them are as tall as 3 men, Israel told him, rocking in place. Matt began rocking also, for it seemed too painfully cold to stand still for any length of time. They wear their hair down to their waists like barbarians, and they take no quarters." "No quarters?" Matt looked over to Israel. "Henry Schroeder, this is Matt Carleton. Matthew's new to Army life," Israel explained with a cough. "What Henry means is no mercy, Matthew. The Hessians would sooner run you through with their bayonets than have to look at you. They're mercenaries, you see, paid to kill, and come all the way from Hesse to do it. You can bet they didn't know a patriot from a Tory till they landed here. They don't care about who their victims be, just as long as there is gold in their pockets," Henry added. "Oh, this camp itch has me legs so raw that me breeches are stuck fast," he moaned, pulling at his pants. "Do you really think they're that bad?" Matt whispered, trying to keep the trembling out of his voice. "My legs? Aye, the blazing itch has spread straight to my shins, Henry groaned. But Israel noticed Matt's worried look. You just stay close to me, little goat, he smiled. Together we'll take care of those Hessians. We're a team, he said, his voice breaking into another cough. When we come up against that bloodthirsty lot, you'll be needing more than Master Gates here, Henry grumbled. He looked down and adjusted the strap that held his drum. Matt was suddenly curious. Henry, why is your coat red? Isn't that the color of the enemy? Matt wanted to know. Henry Shooter cocked his head and smirked. You are new to Army life, aren't you? He shook his head. Just how old are you, anyway? He asked. 10? 10 and a half? Really? Matt answered, trying to sound as old as he could. I suppose that explains it, the freckled-faced Henry said. And it seemed a very mature sigh to Matt, who didn't know that Henry was just 3 years older than he. I'm the drummer for my regiment, so my colors are reversed. Our company wears blue jackets with red facings, so my coat is red with blue facings, Henry explained. An officer has got to pick out his drummer in battle to give the signals, Israel told Matt. It's often so hard to see what with cannon fire and gun smoke that it would take too long to go looking for a face. So the drummer is in opposite colors and can be recognized that easy. Interesting that a drummer had a really important role, right? Because when Henry talks about how the officer has to pick him out so that he can give signals. So the sound of the drum beat is actually a signal to the soldiers. Kind of an interesting way of telling the soldiers what to do. It's an important job to be a drummer. Just as he finished his explanation, Israel was seized with another fit of coughing. He had been coughing from the beginning of the march, but had kept his head low in his coat to muffle the sound. Matt turned and looked behind him. The snow had let up, and as far back as he could see, there were soldiers and artillery on the road. The view from the front was the same. He suddenly felt trapped. There could be no turning back now. He would actually have to face those bloodthirsty Hessians. Matt stood shivering and wondering what they would really be like. He knew that the Americans had won the battle at Trenton, but he didn't know how many rebels were killed in the attack. He seemed to remember from his report that there were only a few casualties. Matt felt a sudden wave of terror come over him when he realized he could now be one of those few. That is the end of the chapter.